as the country wraps up Heritage and Tourism Month, there has been an increase of about 3.8 million tourists since the start of the year. Tourism Month, of course, aims to create awareness of the country's diverse tourism offerings, but also our culture. Well, joining me now is DDG of Destination Development in the Department of Tourism, Dr. Shamilla Chettiar. Dr. Chettiar, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think of the tourism industry and I think of immediately how hard hit it was in 2020 as we hit lockdown and we were in the middle of that COVID-19. And you can perhaps think back to and reflect on just how bad things were back then. But 4 years later, are we starting to attract those numbers back into South Africa? Good morning.
Good morning, Naledi. Thank you very much, and good morning to your viewers. Indeed, we're wrapping up Tourism Month, which is September. We've just come back from celebrations of World Tourism Day in Carnarvon in the Northern Cape. I am very happy to say that what we encourage, of course, during Tourism Month is that South Africans take a short left through their own country. And last year, South Africans took 38 million domestic trips, accounting for 121 billion rand in spend. So tourism is certainly alive and well. And one might wonder why the Northern Cape to actually celebrate Tourism Month. What we discovered post-COVID-19 is that before the pandemic, the Northern Cape used to be on the bucket list of sites South Africans wanted to visit. Post the pandemic, the Northern Cape actually became a destination that people actually realized they traveled to. And for obvious reasons, to go to wide open spaces. So the Northern Cape, of course, a remarkable place, but it also, World Tourism Month coincided with us gazetting the astrotourism strategy. And I think part of our work on astrotourism, which links in with the idea of culture, is telling the indigenous stories of astronomy. The San people have, of course, have been navigating the continent using the night skies for centuries. And
Sure.
part of the work that we're doing on astrotourism is weaving those indigenous storytelling into the science of astronomy.
That is incredible, because when you said astrotourism, I immediately was starting to, think of the SKA, for instance. But it's interesting that you start to weave in the heritage elements and some numbers coming in there for astrotourism. But it does speak to the diversity of what we offer to, I suppose, the tourist that is visiting from South Africa, is a South African, but also those that come from the outside. What are the trends that really we're starting to see forming outside of just the astrotourism that you've talked about that continue to, I suppose, attract the international market? I think of, for instance, once we started to see the lockdowns clearing or easing up a little bit, those that were working from home then started to work and travel. And so you had a lot of, business and leisure tourists. What are the new interests that travelers really want to see when they come to South Africa?
So I think that the biggest trend, and it's a reason that we actually support domestic tourism as the backbone of travel, is that international tourists go where locals go. That is one of the biggest trends. The second biggest trend, I think, is that all tourists, whether they are domestic or whether they are international, want an authentic tourism experience. And this is the reason that they go where locals go, because it feels real to them. And so I think that we encourage domestic tourism for the reason, of course, that it's not just about South Africans exploring their own backyard. It actually does contribute significantly to money and to spend by tourists in the country. This year, of course, we're celebrating 30 years of democracy, and our theme for Tourism Month was Tourism and Peace, 30 years of connecting people to places and culture. In this year, of course, that we are celebrating our democracy, I also think it's fitting that we listed our 12th World Heritage Site, which is the Human Rights, Liberation and Reconciliation, the Nelson Mandela Legacy Sites. Together with that, we actually also listed another site which showed the emergence of modern human behavior. Now, South Africa is extraordinary because we have, of course, the Cradle of Humankind, which is another World Heritage Site. But in our fossil record and in our archaeological record, we actually have both the Cradle of Humankind and the Cradle of Human Culture, because in the Blombos Caves, which are about 300 kilometers outside Cape Town, we've also discovered the oldest known drawing by human hands, which is 73,000 years old. So we say in tourism, welcome home. We've been waiting for you for 4 million years. So we say welcome home to both the Cradle of Humankind, but also to the Cradle of Human Culture. And I don't think that any continent or any other country can boast those two things.
Yeah.
We have in abundance really a varied tourism offering, but that tourism offering, of course, comes from our cultural heritage.
You know, I think of, you know, when we start to see the archaeological history and wealth that we have, that we, you know, show off to the international market, Dr. Chettiar, I immediately think of how it's important for South Africans to do it. So it doesn't have to be, you know, waiting for that school tour. It is, as a parent, during school holidays, take your children to the Cradle of Humankind. Let them experience, you know, the Daung child, for instance, for themselves, outside of just their textbook, and Mrs. Pless and so much more. It's such great things that we're able to showcase to our own children and also give them exposure. But then there's the cultural element of what it is that our tourists locally and internationally want to see. And to talk to us a little bit about that, we are joined by Dr. Xolisa, who is the PanSALB Eastern Cape Provincial Manager. Dr. Xolisa, I'm thinking about how, for instance, in KwaZulu-Natal over the past month, you would have had two big cultural events by the Zulu King. For instance, Umkosi Womhlanga, which is the reed dance, where we saw young maidens walking and leaving reeds at the palace of the king, and similar incidents in the Eastern Cape. But are tourists really starting to travel to see those cultural and language experience that are available to us in the Eastern Cape? Dr. Tshongolo.
Hi. You know, yes, the KZN one is the popular one. But when it comes to Eastern Cape, remember the cultural activity in Eastern Cape was not so popular. Actually, it went down. It used to be this thing, but it went down. But now they're reviving it now, coming up again. But they still do it in, you'll find different groups not doing it as one. It's a Xhosa group, for example, like the Zulus are doing it. But it is coming up, and then they are actually starting to get some popularity as well. Hopefully, in the near future, it will be as big as the one that is taking place in KZN. Yeah. Because the people now have started now actually marketing it, and people are starting to know more about it. Because even if you go on internet, you will still find something about it.
Yeah, because I think there's something to be said about how, even as we saw Umkosi Womhlanga in KZN, on that same day, similar events taking place, for instance, in the Eastern Cape, that South Africans certainly didn't know about, but we brought them to you here as well on Channel 405. But Dr. Tshongolo, I want to talk a little bit about the discussions that we need to be having, or have had as well, this Heritage Month around language development. Some work being done in the Department of Education to really start to see more and more mother tongue languages to improve the reading of our children. But what more language development needs to be taking place, and is it receiving the same resources and support that it really does need from government and other supporters?
You know, what is needed more than anything else is coordination. Because you'll find that there are many things being done. Actually, they've been done like for many years, such as you find universities having their language programs where students are allowed to write their pieces in their mother language. But now when it comes to basic education now, that's where the slow has been. And I think what we need to see more, as much as we see it talked about a lot, but when it comes to resourcing it, that is still a challenge. Yeah. And also the coordination, you know, because you'll remember that languages like Xhosa, but any other language, you have dialects. So then if you need to standardize that and coordinate, that's where PanSALB also comes in to assist with the standardization and coordinate, and so that wherever you are, if you are being taught in isiXhosa, then you will still have a standard terminology for everything.
Yeah.
You know. Yes, so that's what we need to see more. It's actually resources, because those things, they come with resources.
Yeah.
They don't just come on their own.
And I can tell you this, when we travel for the experience, and language is so important for people to hear and experience the diversity in our language. Dr. Chettiar, I'm going to let you have a final bite here to talk about. We've wrapped up Heritage Month, and it's also Tourism Month, where we've talked about our culture and our cultural expression, but also encouraging South Africans to travel the country more often, for others to come and see it. What are the targets that we've set ourselves really for the development of our destinations in the country? And I'm thinking now about, you know, as we start to get into October, you might likely see Christmas decorations going up already. And so people starting to plan their December holidays, creative ideas on where to really start planning that all-important holiday for the end of the year, something that we're not used to hearing.
So I would say that, you know, in South Africa, there's so many extraordinary places to visit. So you can visit, of course, the cradle of humankind, to actually explore the beginnings of humankind. But you can also go down the road to the Origin Center, which is at Wits, and explore the cradle of human culture. And you can also explore the extraordinary township experience that is the Maboneng Arts Experience, which shows you a modern interpretation of culture. You can similarly visit the Komani San cultural landscape in the Northern Cape and Richtersveld, Mapungubwe, which is, of course, in Limpopo, and Robben Island, which is an iconic cultural site that tells our unique South African story.
Yeah.
So there are many amazing places for South Africans to visit, and all you need to do is to open the pages of your tourist guides, visit our South African tourism website, and there's a plethora of amazing things on offer. Our Short Left campaign, which ran in, of course, September. If you go online, you might still find some deals. We'll have some extraordinary deals for you to visit your country and experience it as South Africa.
Yeah. Always better to know your country better than international visitors do it quite often. That might very well happen.
Especially important so that you can take international visitors through your country and be proudly South African.
Absolutely. You know, if you perhaps have been to the Western Cape, you'll likely meet some young people in Khayelitsha, for instance, that have never been to Table Mountain. Little things like that, very, very concerning. But Dr. Tshongolo, before I let you go, final bites on, you know, heritage sites that really are a must-see by the end of this year as we wrap up.
Yes, they absolutely so. They are. And we need to take the issue of language serious. For example, if you have just mentioned now someone from Khayelitsha going to Table Mountain. But if you are from Khayelitsha and you're going there, and then you find that the information that you get there is not actually accessible in your language, that actually limits you, you know, in terms of getting as much information as you would if that information was made available to you in a language you understand.
True.
I know that when it comes to tour guides and stuff, they can still get somebody who can still speak your language to take you around, but there are texts written and there is some info that might not be accessible in your language. So that helps you to know your country better. And if you know your country better, you'll always be making contribution in terms of directing tourists, you know, when they, let's say you just happen to meet somebody, even if it's on a taxi rank, and then the person is asking about something, you can easily direct that person to that something because you do know about it.
Yes.
So it is very much important for people to know their country. And in order for that to take place, that information must be available and accessible in their own language or in a language that they understand best.
Yeah.
So that when they transfer, that info is transferred in a manner that is accurate and correct.
Yeah, really great way to become an ambassador for our country. Learn it yourself. Thank you so much to our guests for reminding us of the work that needs to be done to celebrate our cultural heritage, but also the beautiful sites that we have that must be celebrated across the country. Dr. Shamilla Chettiar, DDG of Destination Development in the Department of Tourism, and Dr. Xolisa Tshongolo, who is the Eastern Cape Provincial Manager for the Pan-South African Languages Board, or PanSALB.